Welcome to our next lecture in series for PHP, a complete guide for beginners. We will talk about form validations. We will take our discussion where we left off in our last session, and we will also learn about regular expressions in PHP and how they work. In any web development language, it's very important to sanitize the data which a user enters, or ensure the validity and integrity of the data which user enters, so that you can avoid and prevent any malicious attacks by hackers. In this particular episode, we will talk about some basic validations and how we can do them using regular expressions and using inbuilt PHP functions. We will take name, email, website or portal in our form and also a comment. Name, we will ensure that it must only contain letters and no numbers. Email, we will ensure that it has a @ and valid domain extension. For website, we will ensure it's a valid URL. Before going ahead, I want to quickly touch upon a super global variable which is _server. So this variable stores an associative array in key and value pairs, everything about the server where the PHP script is executing and the execution environment. For example, it will tell which file name is requesting or is executing the script. We can also know whether it's a get or the post, the request method. We will utilize this in our session today. We can also know what is the document root, the root directory where the current script is executing. And there are many other keys which _server variable, a super global variable, has. There are some PHP built-in functions. HTML special characters is one of the excellent ones. It is again used to convert characters to HTML entities. It is used to encode user input when they enter that input in a site, and used to prevent hacking of website. For example, if a user enters some HTML markup in a user input field, that might take your website into a disarray. All those things you can avoid by using HTML special characters function. In this function, essentially it is converting ampersand, double quotation marks, single quotes, less than mark, which is used for tags in HTML, or greater than mark, into HTML entities in the user input. Regular expressions, there are a library of functions which are there in PHP for regular expression matching. Preg match is one of the main ones. In this function, we pass the pattern which we want to find. We pass the string in which we want to find the pattern, and then it returns 1 or 0. If it finds a match, it returns 1. If it doesn't, then it returns 0. For example, preg match is passed PHP as a pattern. Now, I also want to tell you that / marks the beginning of a pattern, and / this one marks the ending of the pattern. So in the first argument, it is pattern, and here the pattern is PHP. This is the string which we are passing it, and we are trying to find whether it is there in this string, this pattern is there in this string or not. Here it will return 1, as we know that this pattern is lying here. In the second example, it's in lowercase, and this is the string in which we'll try to search, and it will return 0 because it is case sensitive and it doesn't find PHP in this string, and it will return 0. If you want to do a case insensitive search, then you need to have I in your pattern followed by /, then it will do a case insensitive search for PHP, and in this case we will pass the same string. However, this time it returns 1. Preg match function also can return an associative array of positions and search results if we pass a flag preg offset capture in calling of preg match. There are various meta characters which are used to build regular expressions. When you validate an email, when you validate a URL, it's not that straightforward as you just say that I want to find a word 3 characters or 4 characters. You need to rely and make use of meta characters to define your regular expressions. Some of them I have mentioned here. So dot period, it matches a single character except a new line. This character matches beginning of a string. When you want to say beginning of a string, character is used. Dollar matches pattern at end of the string. Asterisk is used to match 0 or more characters. Backslash is used to escape meta characters. Suppose you want to say dot or dollar you want to find dot or dollar in your expression, then you will rely on escaping it with backslash. In your pattern, character class is defined by enclosing them in square brackets. So if I say XYZ, then I'm trying to match characters X, Y, and Z. The example for asterisk could be, if I say in pattern BE star, it will match best, beast, bet, etc. Every string has BE. Dollar, as we discussed, it matches pattern towards the end of the string. So com dollar will match URLs. As in URL, we want to ensure it ends with a com. Not true really, because you can have URL without .com also. However, just for the sake of example, if I want to see that the string ends with com, then I can always use this as a pattern. A-Z, it matches all lowercase letters. So if I say /A-Z and end my pattern, it will match all strings which are utilizing lowercase characters. Capital A capital Z matches all uppercase strings. Similarly, this is a class you can define for numbers. This is an example where we will use regular expression to validate a name. So here we are passing this pattern. Pattern starts from / as we know, and it ends at / and caret symbol we use. And this is a class where we want to say what all characters are allowed. So here we are saying lowercase or uppercase letters are allowed, followed by any number of characters. And that's how we say. So in this regular expression, if you use this to validate your name, and in your name your user input contains a number, a numeric, it will return as 0. It will not validate. That's what we want. Here is another little bit more complex example for validating email. So here we pass this pattern, this big pattern, to validate email, and second argument is our variable which has email, which is inputted by the user. / denotes start and ending of the pattern, and the first section here we are saying it should start with lower or uppercase letters with any numerics, dot, underscore, or dash, followed by @ symbol, after which we can have uppercase or lowercase letters, numbers, or dash, followed by dot. So here if we are escaping this dot by backslash, @ followed by dot, and after dot in the URL extension we can have lowercase or uppercase letters which are 2 to 5 character in length. So at the end of email we can have lowercase or uppercase letters which are 2 to 5 characters in length, like .com, .net, like that. This is how a regular expression is utilized to validate an email. So let's now go to our example and we'll try to do some hands-on with our code. To utilize and do this, let's create a form. This is a basic HTML skeleton, what you can see here. Let's try to create a form for our various fields. We will pass action where we want to take it. Inside this we will utilize our underscore server super global variable which we just discussed. Server, passing the key as PHP self. It will return the name of the script what we are trying to execute. So for this script, the name is index.php. It will return that. And index.php we have defined in a folder in our web root directory. The folder I have named this time as form validation, and index.php is the file. This essentially will return index.php back, and that will become argument or value to this attribute action in our form tag. We have now name of the script. This time we will try to use method right from the start as post, as now we know from our last session that post is more secure and safe than get. We will use post, and target we will use as self only. So here is our action, method and target attributes for form tag. So we have name, input type is text, name, let's keep it as name only. ID, I'm giving it for sake of completeness. However, it's used for client-side validations from JavaScript and others. You can avoid it, but I am just doing it as a sake of better practice and completeness. Value is blank. Email. So we have name, email. Input type is radio. Name is gender. ID is female. Value is female. Let's give a break here. Copy this. Let's give a break here, and then we can give comment. Comment will be shown using text area. Name is comment. Text area has an ending tag as well, not like input tag. So we close it here. Submit button, input type is submit, value is submit, name is submit. I would have told you earlier that if you miss to define name field in any of your input fields, it will not be submitted. The value will not be submitted. It will not go back using get or post. So oftentimes when you are developing, you are learning new, you might miss on name field, and then you will wonder why this value is not appearing and you are not able to fetch using your methods on the server side. The name attribute is very key and important. I'm just formatting a little bit. So name, email, gender, comment. Now another thing which I want to mention is in text area, important attributes are column. You can specify 50 the column width, and rows as suppose 10. Okay, so now this is our form which we have defined. And in last one we had a separate file for processing our PHP request. In this we will utilize the same file. That's the reason in action we have value of PHP self. We want that when a user submits this form, it goes back to same file index.php. Now to handle that, we need to include some PHP code here. So let's initialize the variables. So we'll define a variable for name, for email, for gender, comment, and initialize them to blank. Similarly, let's have variables for errors, name, error, email, error. So we have all error variables defined, and let's try to validate if they are blank. We will utilize our underscore server super global variable for request method to ensure that we are traversing this part of the code only when the form is submitted. If our variable underscore server request method is equals to post, then only we want to do our validation for variables, as we know now user has submitted the form in client side. If empty. We use empty PHP inbuilt function to see if in our underscore post associative array we check for name, as name is a mandatory field. If it is empty, then we assign our variable for error name error name cannot be left blank. Else we can assign name from our associative array. Here at this time I want to create a function test input where we will sanitize the inputs received by the user, like name, email, web, and comments. So for that, let us at the very top create a function and name it as test input. This function will accept one argument, which would be, let's call it as data. Inside this, let's first try to use the trim function in PHP to trim any leading or trailing spaces or new lines or tabs in this user input. Then we will utilize strip slashes function of PHP. It will remove any backsplashes. Then we will utilize our function which we discussed, htmlspecialchars. And finally, once we have all this executed, we return back what we received from the user, but now it is sanitized. So that's how you pass a value, use successive operations using PHP inbuilt functions, and finally you return back the sanitized string back. Here, when I was utilizing this local variable and assigning it what user inputted in the name field, let me use test input. I have called here test input function, what we just created, and passed inside argument name from the post array. Same pretty much I need to do for email as well. Email cannot be left blank. The comment field, the gender field are non-mandatory, so we are not checking them for presence at this time. Let's save this and see, refresh, parse error, syntax error, line 25. Let's see what is happening in line 25. Okay, so we are missing semicolon here. We have a semicolon missing here. If I leave name, how we can test this is by printing these errors. Let's go to our form and include a span tag, how we did in our last exercise. Span style color is red, and here we include our small PHP snippet to echo our name error variable. Name cannot be left blank. We will utilize the same thing in email and after radio and comment. So in email we will have email error. We should have done email error here, and we missed to add a field for portal. We need to take portal also along with name and email from the user. So let's define portal as well here. Now we have checked name for blank, email for blank. Let us now check for if not empty $_post website website is test input dollar post website, as we want to assign website value if it is not empty. Same goes for comment. Let's assign comment after sanitizing the input to the variable. So this is variable comment. This is email. So now let's come back to our, so if I enter and say submit, email is blank. If I do this, name cannot be left. You see here when I enter name and I say submit, it finds validation. As now, for now we have only two validations for name and email. They should not be blank, so it correctly returns me the validation. However, it takes away the value of name from here. So for that, what simply we can do is in our form we can utilize the value tag to display the value of the variables which we have initialized. Very simply, what you can do is put a PHP snippet here to echo value of the variable. Same you could do for email and for the comment and for the portal as well. For radio, we can utilize the checked attribute in the input tag for radio. We need to do a little bit more heavy lifting, where we just put PHP snippet and we say here if we need to check the variable for gender is equal to female, then you echo checked male radio. Similarly for the third radio. After doing this, our values should be retained in our form. So if I say Mudit and I say submit, it retains Mudit. If I select male, it doesn't retain male, so we need to check what is happening. Okay, so let's check whether we are assigning, so name we are assigning, email we are assigning, website comment, but we didn't assign gender, so let's do that. That's the reason it was not setting. So now it should work. So if you see, I have initialized wrongly, so now it is working perfectly. We have successfully tested if email is blank, it gives us an error. If name is blank, it gives us that error. Now if in name I put a number, this is not a valid name, however it accepts it. So let's put a handling if name is not blank. So if there is no error on the name, and here we assign this variable name as our inputted name field, pass it through our function test input, where we sanitize the data inputted by the user. At this point, let's check for correctness of name. or validate our name input. So for this we will use our regular expression, an inbuilt PHP function preg match, where we will pass our first argument as pattern. In our case it will start with caret followed by a class where lowercase letters, uppercase letters and blank followed by asterisks and close of our pattern. So this is our regular expression which we will utilize to validate the name. So the second argument which we will pass will be our name. If this returns 1, then that means our name is valid. There are no numeric there or special characters there. And if it is not 1, then that means name is not valid. So in this case we will assign our name error variable. So we initialize the error variable. Now let's do some handling for email as well. If it is not blank, we assign this error. Otherwise we take the input from the post array for email and assign it in a variable. Now let us use this variable and utilize a built-in function which PHP provides. The function name is filter underscore var, where we utilize the input as the variable, the string which you want to filter, and second argument is the attribute filter validate email. So this tells this PHP function filter underscore var that you want to validate email in this string $website. If this returns 1, then that means it's all good. If it returns 0, then it means there is some issue. So we will check for if it is not, filter is not correct or the format is not correct, then we will initialize our website error variable. Sorry, this was for email. This should be email error. Similar validation we will do for website as well. For this we will pass argument as filter validate URL to the inbuilt function filter underscore var to validate a website string. We have successfully checked for name not being blank. If it is not blank, assign to a local variable and then do regular expression validation for the variable name so that it can contain only letters. And then similarly for email, if it is blank, then assign the error variable. Otherwise, take the value from the post array and assign it to email variable which we created. Now, since email is populated, we can check and validate for its correctness using the inbuilt PHP function filter underscore var. If validation turns out incorrect, then initialize the error variable for email. Same concept for website, where if it is not empty, then we assign the website into local variable website and use the inbuilt PHP function filter underscore var to validate website. Here you have noticed already that we never checked for the emptiness of variable for website, because website as we planned was not a mandatory field. That's the reason we ignored this check for empty in website. We come to comment where we assign this variable comment using what is there in the post array. Let's try to save this and go to our form. So if you see now, since we had numbers there, it gave us an error. Name is not in valid format perfectly. If I give name correctly here and email cannot be left blank. Now if in email I give mudit.mehta at, and let's see, email format is not correct, at com, let's see now, it's still not correct, at gmail.com. So now let's see, perfect. So email, name and email is correct. However, no error we see, it returned for website blank because it is allowing that, and gender is male, comment is blank, that's also non-mandatory field. Now the thing missing is display of these values. So let's go back to our code and put our condition towards the end logically. PHP. Here, let's check all the error variables to see if they are blank. And we echo our message, submission successful. So what we are essentially doing here is checking for each error variable for all 5 inputs: name, email, website, gender and comment. If there is no error variable set, then we are displaying submission successful and all the values. Let's save this and try to submit. So now we see, since these two were mandatory, all these 3 were not mandatory. So as long as the input for these 2 are good, it displays the value of the form. So we see that we never assigned portal, gender and comment. So it gave us for 2. Let's try to quickly add a numeric here, and it should give a validation and not output because there is an error set for this variable. Similarly, if we correct this name, let's work piecemeal, and email is correct, and we indeed get everything here. Now for website, let's put yahoo.com. Let's put yahoo.com. So website format is not correct. If we put yahoo.com, so it's expecting the security http :yahoo.com. It accepts the URL and it retains, put gender, and it accepts and retains the gender. We change the gender, perfect. This is an example for PHP validation at the server side. Submit. All the values are coming from the server, and after getting validation done in PHP. Hope you were able to grasp certain things from this example. If I try to go back to the code and show you, this is the complete code, and you will see in the description and resources for this file. I would strongly recommend you going through understanding this code again and then coding it with your hands. Any coding language will require a lot of practice, and when you code it with your hands multiple times, the syntax and the finer nuances will be etched in your mind. Like I was doing a mistake here by putting one less equal to sign, and it was not doing this validation correctly. It was just a silly mistake, but it took some time for me and I had to pause the video to find out where I was going wrong. As a learning from our last session and this session is that in this session we use post everywhere. because post is more secure, and as we saw in our URL also, it never displays all the values which are passed by the server back. So it's far more secure. And to recap, we used custom function test_input, where we passed a parameter and we sanitized the data using 3 built-in PHP functions, one after the other: trim, strip slashes, and HTML special characters. Then for all the user input fields which we received from the form, we utilized our custom function to sanitize that. As you see here, all the variables, when we set with the values from the form, the post array, we use this field and pass the value inside and then stored in our variable. We initialized all our placeholder variables for the values as blank. Similarly, we initialized all our error variables as blank. Though I never use comment error and gender error, but it was just to give you an idea that how neatly you can organize your code. This is module which is meant for doing all the validations. We can always encapsulate all of this validations in a separate PHP file and include it here to make this code look more readable. This is the form we utilize to take inputs from the user. What I want to again recap is that for retaining the default values, as and when user enters a value in name or email, and then you submit it and then you pass back the error, you wanted to retain the value which the user entered. So for that, we utilize the value attribute in the input tag, and we initialize that with dynamic variable value which was stored from the previous submit attempt. That way, every time the value was retained in the variable. We did this for everything: name, email, website, comment, and gender. In gender, since we were using our radio, so in radio we need to select checked flag. We need to make the checked flag in the particular radio which is selected by the user. We use this if statement to find out whether this particular radio was selected. Finally, what we do is we check all of our error variables, and if all of them are blank, then we know it's good to display the values submitted by the user, and then we display the values. So instead of displaying in your web development, you would process on these values, take them to database, do some updates in database, do some commits in database. So all those things, it could be anything. This is the point where you will do and process user inputs, as by this time all of them are sanitized, all of them are valid. Hope this lecture for validations, regular expressions was helpful, and I will see you next now for our next lecture on working with cookies and sessions in PHP. See you there then. Thank you so much. Bye.